Last Alliance. The Divided Region, Book 3 by D.J.J. Watson. Chapter 14. The promise of dawn replaced the moonlight as it swept the landscape and warmed the air. They kept their ride to a steady trot and stopped every couple of hours for Alia to rest. It was hard going, and it added more days to an already long journey, but they persevered. "We're not far." Darius gazed at the horizon. Green hills and valleys lined the terrain, broken only by the occasional tree. "One more day, and we should reach Kladstin." Janga was the only man to sigh in relief. Helmund remained silent, as he had done since they left the woodland, while Alia barely held onto his reins. Leaning forward, his head drooped, as if he had received the worst news a man could get. Darius grimaced. To see his closest friend in this condition hurt him in unimaginable ways. He closed his eyes and cursed the wretched Ubric, wishing to slay it again. Alia was always the calm one. It didn't matter if they had just walked into the jaws of a dragon, for he would be the first to assure Darius that it was all right. He inhaled the fresh air and pressed on as the sun rose over the land and bathed the grass in gold. The light swooned over the hills and meadows, giving each a warm glow. Despite this peace-inducing calmness, they were still in the wildlands and had to be vigilant for both men and beast alike. Darius was yet to speak with Helmund and settle whatever was brewing inside him. Though there had been opportunities to converse, the timing never seemed right. But this commodity was also running dry. Darius did not want to bring their troubles into Kladstin. He already had a lot on his shoulders with the unannounced visit. Not only must he plead with them to help Alia, but he had the greater task of persuading them to stand with him when it was time to confront his brother and father at the capital. He hoped the Vrachor prophecy was enough to unite their two factions. However, even this might not be sufficient. The wizards of Kladstin were not the type to forgive or forget easily. His kind, his family, had hounded them for centuries and imposed a limit on how many wizard-born bloods entered the sanctuary and learned the way of the white light. Janga gently rode up beside Darius, distracting him from his thoughts. "Will you speak with Helmund today?" He nodded. "Swear it. The tension is making my axe twitchy." Darius turned to him. "What are we? Children? Yes, I'll settle the issue before dawn." "Good. I can't tolerate much more of his sulk." With that, he fell back and left Darius to lead, while the others followed a few meters behind. They came upon a valley of white rocks. Until now, only grass and trees stood in their way. To see so many scattered boulders lacking nature's symmetry made Darius wary. He surveyed the grassy chasm with guarded eyes. His first thoughts were that it must have been an old settlement that didn't stand the test of time, or perhaps the remains of an ancient ambush. He approached cautiously and halted. A narrow trail snaked through to a meadow on the other side. The grass lay flattened, likely from countless past travelers. To travel around the outskirts would add at least another 3 or 4 hours onto their journey. The ground was too steep, and the many boulders would make navigating on horseback near impossible. He glanced at Alia, knowing such detours weren't an option. "Look!" Janga pointed to a mound of rocks that overlooked them. Darius squinted as shapes appeared, only to disappear. It was difficult to tell what they were, but he sensed they didn't mean well. "Scouts, maybe?" Janga asked. Alia was too busy battling with pain and infection to take any note of what was happening. "No," Darius uttered. "It has all the makings of an ambush." Janga drew his weapon. "Easy now." Darius raised a hand. When the shapes resurfaced, they were much closer. Darius could have sworn he saw fur, which would have ruled out a scouting party, for Vlencians scarcely wore hides, let alone soldiers. Darius glanced at Alia, weighing up their options. He was too weak to ride at haste and too injured to fight. They could turn and head back the way they came, but that would almost certainly seal his fate. Darius swung one leg over and dismounted his horse. "What are you doing, Tittling?" "Doing what I should have done days ago." Darius helped Alir down from his mount. He took the essential supplies from his steed's satchel and then dragged his friend a short distance to his steed. Janga jumped down to give him a hand in hoisting their comrade. Darius climbed onto his saddle, with Alir hunched over in front like a sleeping corpse. "Take his horse," he ordered Helmund. "We may need to ride recklessly." "But the mounts are tired. They haven't rested in a while," Helmund replied. "There is little choice. We can turn back." "We cannot," Darius said. "Alir doesn't have the time. He will not make it." Helmund's eyes darted in every direction, his body taut like a bowstring. His hands were restless, his throat bobbing up and down without pause. It was as if the nomad sensed something ungodly was about to appear from the rocks. "Steady yourself," Darius barked, sensing his desire to do something stupid. With a mouth that kept gaping open and shut, Helmund flitted between Janga and Darius. "I can't—" He tugged his horse, pulling away from the group. "I'm not willing to die for your cause. Sorry." Before either of them could say anything, the nomad steered his horse around and galloped back the way they had travelled. "Helmund!" Darius yelled, watching as the hooves churned up earth and stones. "Helmund!" "The coward!" Janga spat. "I should chase him down and kill him." "For once, I am tempted by your suggestion," Darius said, taking in Alir's slumped figure. It seemed he was deteriorating by the hour, precious minutes they could not ill waste. "No, let whoever is chasing us do that." "Curse him!" the big man growled. They whirled their attention back to the rocky valley, where a dozen or more shaggy, piercing eyes now awaited them upon various rocks. They were surrounded not by men, but by snarling bloodwolves. Darius reached for his sword and pulled it free of his scabbard. The creatures growled, their slitted pupils ablaze in the shard of sunlight. It was hard to tell how many there were, but it was clear they outnumbered them. A few were larger than the others, but they all shared that trademark red line drawn down their snouts. The largest two were at the front of the pack. One was an oversized male with a dark black pelt and a livid scar that crossed his right ear. He stood tall upon a boulder and had his neck craned to see over their heads. The other was just as big, but with greyish fur and equally large fangs, the alpha female. "I'm all for a fight, Tittling," Janga blew. "But this would be mindless." Darius wanted no part in any kind of combat. There were two choices, both seemingly impossible: go back or push forward. To do the former risked Alir's life. To do the latter would endanger them all, not least the future of Vlencia and Estos. The horses grew restless, with Alir's steed fighting against Janga's grip. "Well," Janga growled. Darius spoke without blinking. "We ride through with everything we've got." His comrade's face paled as he sat limply atop his horse. "What if they catch up to us? These beasts can run for days. We're no match for them. Best to deal with them nearer to Kladstin than in the wildlands." Darius' tone was unguarded. His fear was already rife. He tried to conjure a strong front, but with each passing second, he felt himself drowning in a wave of panic. If you have a better plan, now is the time to share it. "This is madness." Janga frowned and then fixed his axe on his back. "But then, when have we ever done the same thing?" Darius nodded and inhaled sharply as the bloodwolves remained poised to give chase. "Ride hard and true. If we make it past them, we'll reach Kladstin by nightfall." Janga hummed. "Then what are we waiting for?" He looked at him knowingly. Alir's survival, their survival, depended on what came next. He gave it some consideration and then yanked the reins, sending his horse into a fast gallop. Janga followed suit, as did Alir's steed, whose neighing grew louder with widened eyes. The bloodwolves sprang off their rocks and chased them without hesitation. Their webbed paws pounded the terrain, making high-pitched howls as they ran. Their pupils were ablaze with desire. their fangs dripping with saliva as if already tasting their flesh. The layout of the boulders made it awkward for the beasts to unlock a full sprint, and Darius used this to their advantage to gain some ground. They forged through the narrow path, while Alea remained slumped forward, now unconscious. "No, no," Darius mumbled. "Don't give up on me, brother. Not now. Not yet." The wolf pack snarled and snapped in unison. They were at least 4 lengths behind, but Darius knew it wouldn't be long before they were on them. He swallowed the lump in his throat and pushed his horse to scale over the many rocks in their path. They reached the crest of the valley, where a meadow stretched out ahead, as far as their eyes could see. "Faster! Faster!" Darius cried, as his mount flew into the tall grass. When he looked over his shoulder, he had hoped to see the wolves ebb away and give up on the hunt, but they didn't. The alpha male of the pack led the charge, his tongue flapping in the wind as it bounded after them. The female kept pace closely behind, her eyes fixed on the prize as a line of wolves ran alongside her. Darius could feel the power leaving his horse. Its breath grew labored, and its stride slowed. Fear shone in Janga's eye as he too was losing ground. "Hurry!" Darius roared. "I can't go any faster!" "You have to!" The savage predators were closing in, snapping at their heels. Darius gritted his teeth and urged his horse onward, but the steed could only give so much. Not even its instinct to survive could sustain its gallop. Darius whirled around on his saddle and yelled for Janga to release Alea's horse. It was their only choice. "Let it go!" The blood wolves advanced, snarling and snapping their jaws as they neared. The horse blew in fear, desperate to flee the danger it sensed. Janga's hand clamped down, then released its grip. The animals swiftly leapt away from them now that it was no longer tethered to the Elronian. The wolves seemed at a loss for what to do, but the alpha soon guided them towards the runaway steed. Darius could only watch as the mount's hind legs kicked out against its pursuers to little avail. The wolves, having likely chased down thousands of prey like this, leaned into their numbers, each clamping down on a piece of hide and bringing its sizable quarry to a stop. The horse bucked and kicked, its legs soon turning crimson from the continuous ravaging, yet all Darius saw were the whites of its bulging eyes. They spoke of pain and primal fear. The steed eventually slowed and reared up on its hind legs before finally toppling over and succumbing to the pack's numbers. Its large chest heaved with exertion, its ears lying flat against its head, waiting for death to come. Darius was spared the rest of the grisly scene as wagging tails and eager bodies surrounded it. He gazed ahead as they galloped away from nature's darker side. The wildlands had earned themselves yet another soul, yet another tale of misfortune. It was a cruel and unforgiving place, where only those most adaptable survived. As the sun shone down on him and Janga, for what felt like the first time in days, a vague sense brewed inside Darius. It was neither hope nor doom, optimism nor pessimism, but something in between. Kladstin was near. He could almost smell the floral notes in the air. The sooner they reached the sanctuary, the sooner he could unload the burdens he had carried for so long. Chapter 15. Night descended on the outer reaches of the wildlands, bringing with it a brisk chill and sobering thoughts. Darius's gaze hovered over the distance where Kladstin lay less than an hour away. He already envisioned the castle's towers standing like dark shards against the black sky, its presence as old as the land itself. Unlike other cities, Kladstin was said to be home not to a commune of markets, taverns, or other mortal hubs, but a small contingent of buildings that housed its wizards and secrets. A stone-paved paradise surrounded by utopian plants and ravines where the unliving were alive. Bards told tales of the Tree of Truth in the center of its vast courtyard, where in place of leaves, its pale branches sprouted parchment and scribbled tidings. What they entailed held great curiosity over those outside Kladstin's fortified walls. Darius had long deemed such tales nonsense, for a bard's very livelihood depended on spinning the most enrapturing fables. Even if this wizard utopia were true, even if the Tree of Truth did exist, it benefited mortals little beyond brief escapism. Darius gazed down as the horse's canter rocked Alea's unconscious form, hope and dread filling him in equal measure. His mind turned to the seemingly insurmountable task ahead. Not only must he win the Archmage's ear, but ask the wizard to put aside the persecution of his forefathers and assist his cause. The more he sat on it, the more ludicrous the ask seemed. The wizards had no business helping House Rarkez, nor the people of Estos, for that matter. But maybe, just maybe, they didn't share a mortal's vengeance. That was the hope Darius clung to. Though with every gallop towards Kladstin, the more fragmented it became. They soon decided to rest and let their mounts graze on the abundance of grass. Janga quickly set about making a modest fire that barely warmed their stiff hands. "I still can't believe that coward abandoned us," Janga spat into the flames, stoking the embers. "I share your anger," Darius replied, casting a watchful eye over Alea's ever-shallowing breaths. Helmand proved himself to be a craven. Janga snorted. "Your words are too kind." A pregnant pause came between them as the fire continued to crackle and pop. The former guild leader looked at him and noted his unease. "You doubt the wizards will help us, don't you?" he said. "I distrust many things these days. You don't need to be so cryptic with me, titling." Janga shifted closer, the flames reflecting in his only eye. "I've been with you since the start. I know you better than you think." "Perhaps you do." Darius sighed, staring into the distance. "It seems the nearer we get to Kladstin, the more questions I have." "I only have one. Why would the wizards unsettle their lives to help the people who have heaped so much shit on them?" Darius swallowed, turning to the big man. "Because it won't just be our existence that is threatened if the Dark Lord rises from his slumber." "You have a point," Janga said. "Keep that front and center when we knock on their gates. Doubt has a nasty habit of gnawing at your confidence if you give it too much space to play. Had it many times leading up to raids." "You did?" Darius asked. "Aye. It's a sensation that grows stronger as the hours unfold. If you're lucky, it passes and you fulfill the task. And if you are not, it consumes you. That's when mistakes happen." Janga paused, hanging his head in disappointment. "Like Valga. You mean to say you doubted the raid all along?" "Yes, and many times." Darius remembered Bolin and the other guild members who had lost their lives in the botched plunder. "Then why did you go ahead with it?" "You said it back in the lair. Desperation. That was why I did it." Janga stared absently into the fire, a pained expression enveloping him. "I was desperate to lift our spirits and fill our bellies. We needed a victory, Darius, badly. Instead, we incurred the greatest of losses." "We did. And there's not a day that goes by I don't regret it." Janga turned to him, his eye glossed over, his voice quaking. "That's why we must not let doubt rule us." Darius took solace from his words. "You are right." "I know I am." They both laughed with each other. "Tell me, though," Darius said, "does leading men get easier to bear?" Janga snorted. "I led a band of thieves. You're spearheading a revolution that will determine the fate of Estos. I'm afraid there's no comparison. But the challenges don't change." "No," Janga said. "Just the stakes." Darius glanced south to the open road, far in the distance. Dark, ominous clouds formed over the horizon. A storm brewed on the winds, though the night was still for now. A cluster of orange dots stole his attention. Torches. They seemed distant, but they were moving closer, like a small swarm of fireflies. A rustling in the dirt startled him. He turned around and saw Alea roll from one side to the other. Darius looked back toward the road. They were some distance off, but it was unclear if they were on horseback. Janga was the first to react by stomping out the fire, sending embers into the carrying breeze. "What do you think?" Janga whispered. "Travelers or the cavalry?" "My gut tells me we're being tracked." The torches grew larger, illuminating the road they travelled on. They were far enough away that the silhouettes of their bearers were indiscernible, but close enough to stir a cold sweat between Darius's shoulder blades. "They draw near," said Janga. "We should wait for them to pass." "No." Darius shook his head. "If we do that, we'll be easy targets." "Then what do you propose?" He looked at him with a frank expression. "We ride to Kladstin. Now." Janga's face faltered, but he didn't argue. "How long do we have?" Darius's eyes fell back on the approaching mass. "If they spot you and I leaving, mere minutes. If they don't, we may have as much as a half-hour head start. But we must hurry." Janga exhaled deeply, taking in Alia's silent form. "And what if they reach us before we make it to Kladstin?" "Let's pray that doesn't happen." "Aye, but the gods and I have an estranged relationship. Then I suggest you repair that. Quickly." They were up on their feet, packing up their water skins and flint. The horses grew fidgety, as if sensing the threat, but a few pats on their snouts kept them calm for now. He and Janga helped Alia up onto Darius's horse and quickly mounted the steeds. Alia was completely out of it, which concerned him, but there was no time to indulge it. Darius bit his lip and gently maneuvered the animal west. They did not wait for their pursuers to come into view, nor did they want to attract them with a hasty retreat. They rode for Kladstin, slowly at first, then picked up speed as they dropped out of the torchbearer's line of sight. When Darius deemed them clear, he yanked the reins, and they broke into a full-on sprint. They bounced about on the spongy ground, splashing through puddles and ditches. The pounding hooves startled birds from nearby trees. All the while, Darius kept a watchful gaze over his shoulder. Because of Alia's added weight, Janga edged out in front. "I don't think they saw us leave," Darius said. "Thank the sky gods for that," Janga yelled over the galloping. "You repaired that bond quickly. I was created in their image, after all." Darius smirked. "They will curse you for such insults." Janga chuckled and wolfishly grinned. Alia's head bobbed back and forth, prompting Darius to lean forward and tuck his elbows around him. The ride was bumpy, but he hoped that would be enough to keep him in the saddle. They joined the main road and rode on for what felt like an hour, when, in reality, it was mere minutes. Darius glanced over his shoulder, and to his horror, lit torches materialized. They weren't as steady as they were before, which only meant one thing: the cavalry had given chase. "Hold on!" Darius yelled. "We've got company!" Janga twisted his torso around and grimaced. "It never bloody stops. Neither shall we." Darius drove his heels into the horse's ribcage. It whinnied in protest and sent a spray of foam from its mouth. Flicking its tail, it hurtled forward, its hooves pounding the road like a tribal drum. The clouds parted, and light spilt onto the uneven trail. Darius was thankful for the clarity, but it only accentuated their pursuers. Whatever creatures they were riding had lungs of steel and legs made from iron, for they were catching up fast. Darius and Janga approached a divergence on the road. If they took the coming left, it would lead to Westrun. Take the right, and they would be several days off Istril. They ignored both and blazed straight ahead towards the gates of Kladstin, which eased into focus. It was still dark, but the sliver of moonlight illuminated the path enough to keep them from straying off it. Lit lanterns suddenly emerged from the sea of branches. They dotted the castle walls and grew brighter with each stride. The glass panes reflected their glow, each splashing a slightly different hue onto the shadows. Darius angled the horse towards the sanctuary as ancient trees and plush greenery flanked the long, narrow road. The wind rushed in his ears, his hair flying wildly about his face. He braved another look behind. The cavalry had made up considerable ground, so much so that their steeds' hooves thundered over their own. "They're getting close," Janga shouted. I know. We'll never reach the gates in time. Hold your nerve, Darius rebuked. They continued to drive their horses forward. The roar of their pursuers soon came like waves crashing into the shore, causing the hair on the back of his neck to stand. "We're doomed," Janga spat. Darius cursed, for the gates of Kladstin were just a few hundred yards away. Hooded watchmen lingered on the ramparts, with many more gathering to witness their desperate approach. Darius and Janga shouted in unison, their calls carrying on the wind. Amid their pleas came the unmistakable whoosh of arrows. Darius glanced back only to dodge a projectile as it sailed past his cheek. He snapped his head back ahead. "Open the gates," he begged. The watchmen seemed to trade uncertain looks at one another until, among the robed cluster, a commanding figure stepped out holding a staff. "Darius," Janga uttered. "We're almost there," Darius interjected. "Hold on." "They're not going to help us." The big man's voice was hollow. He looked at Janga and saw only a face fraught with panic, the same panic that iced over Darius's blood. This was not where it ended for them. Not yet. With desperation burning in his throat, he roared, "I am Darius Rarkez, son of the king! Open the gates!" The watchmen's ever-morphing silhouettes shuffled uncomfortably as they regarded the senior wizard. Like a stoic, he stood there, his grey hair becoming more pronounced under the moon's gentle beam. No more words left Darius, only whispered prayers. The gates loomed and were unlike what he imagined. Strange, otherworldly magic seemed woven into them. He could feel it, its thrum resonating on his skin the closer they got. Thick vines snaked their way up and down the doors, like coils around an animal, while drawings of wizards and sorceresses holding aloft staffs were engraved on its iron surface. If it wasn't for the barrage of arrows and death whispering in his ear, Darius might have panicked when the static forms suddenly twitched. Their mouths became animated, moving and breathing like some form of living art, while their eyes stared blankly at Darius. It was as if they knew who he was and what dynasty he belonged to. He felt his horse slow beneath him as they neared the towering doors. Explicit commands roared behind as the hunting party neared them. Amid his thrashing pulse, he recognized the voice. No, he thought, it cannot be. He looked behind, and among the moonlight stood out a rider with fair hair and a square jaw. He donned the famous armor and cape of the Crimson Guard and was flanked by 8, 9, 10 others. Berg. His stomach lurched. "Tittling!" Janga exclaimed. "We're going to ride straight into the blasted gates." Darius gazed up at the ramparts one last time. "I carry a message you must hear, of the Dark Lord Vrakor." Even from here, he could see the lead watchman's face sag. With great urgency, he raised his staff, and the fortified entrance groaned open. A thick mist poured forth, forming a quick haze that caused Darius's eyes to water. A flash of light shone overhead as the watchman manifested ethereal bows that burned a fiery blue. Ghostly projectiles soared past Darius and Janga and struck the ground behind them with a wet thunk. "Princey!" Berg called, the grinding hooves accompanying his order. "Surrender, or this will only end in more bloodshed." He ignored his old adversary and dug his heels into his horse, spurring the mount forward with renewed vigor. Together they hurtled through the gap, their hooves quickly clattering blanched cobblestone. Darius's breath caught in his windpipe as he brought his steed to a stop. Beyond lay a courtyard, matching everything bards spoke of in taverns and inns across the kingdom. Flat, vast and overlooked by majestic buildings crafted not by mortal hands. His gaze darted from one tower to the next, an inexplicable serenity capturing the square. "What's that?" Janga said breathlessly. His eyes fell onto an ancient tree perched in the center, its long outstretched arms reaching in every direction. "By the gods!" Darius puffed, shaking his head. "It's the tree of truth." Shadeless, it swayed in the gentle breeze. The castle beyond was more like a sculpted mountain than assembled stone. It was tall and built into the fortified walls with dozens of smaller towers jutting out from it. A contingent of men in robes encircled Darius and Janga, wizards. Breathless and still writhing from adrenaline, Darius gazed up at the ramparts as the watchmen's bows vanished in a mist of smoke. No longer were they in the world of the living. No, this was the realm of magic. The commanding sentry must have travelled down an unseen staircase, for he approached their horses with 4 shrouded figures. The gates sealed with a loud thud, startling their steeds. Alir remained slumped forward, completely unaware of the events. "Dismount the beasts," the sorcerer demanded. Darius was expecting his words to have mystical undertones to them, but they didn't. His voice was clean and educated, soft yet commanding, yet most reassuring, that of a mortal. Being this close, Darius could also make out the man's features better. He had a long face with a pronounced beard and wrinkles that plagued the corners of his eyes. Darius leapt off his horse, as did Janga. "Are you the mage?" The wizard pursed his lips. "No, I am Kaviras, the gatekeeper of Kladstin." Darius and Janga glanced at each other, but refrained from saying a word. Kaviras pointed at Alir. "You are carrying someone." Darius nodded. "Yes, he's gravely injured." "What ails him?" "A beast broke his leg, and we fear he is slipping into the void." "I see." The wizards flanking Kaviras moved closer, their heads tilted. With a nod from the gatekeeper, they grasped Alir's body. "What are you doing with him?" Darius demanded. "Do you want our help or not?" Kaviras replied. Darius hesitated, but finally relented. With a nod, he watched hopelessly as they carried Alir past the ancient tree and towards the castle entrance. "Where are they taking him?" Janga growled. Kaviras dismissed the inquiry and gazed at them as if trying to read their intentions. "We have had several encounters with mortals lately," he said. "It seems many see us as shelter from their troubles." "We're not like that," Darius countered. "That's not the purpose of this visit." "They all say that," Kaviras replied. "We have travelled a great distance and overcome much hardship to deliver this message." The gatekeeper took a slow breath and stepped closer. The wizard was no taller than Darius, but he carried an air of magical might that could crush him with a mere thought. "Yet you are the disgraced son of King Robic." Darius's mouth went dry. The searing pain of his words rendered him speechless. "We welcome no one here, Darius Rarkez, no son of the king, no daughter of the people, and certainly no traitors." Kaviras's eyes glinted with suspicion. A cold gust of wind suddenly blew past, howling like 1,000 wolves. "But," his face relaxed, "given your mention of the Dark Lord, we will grant your message an ear. You shall meet with the Archmage at dawn." Janga gasped in relief. Darius still felt numb, but he was thankful for the grace. "Follow my brothers and sisters into the castle. They shall escort you to our guest tower," Kaviras said. "You may leave your steeds here." "What about our weapons?" Janga asked, preparing to surrender his axe. Kaviras smiled, running his eyes up and down the haft. "They are little threat here."
D.J.J. Watson here, and don't worry, we'll be back to the story in a jiffy. This is just a quick reminder to let you know that you can grab Last Alliance, the full and uninterrupted version, over at my website, and any of the other books in the series so far, which there are 4. So, yes, you can get those. The links are in the description. And with that, let's get back to the story.
Chapter 16. The road never ended. It was dark, the wind icy and carrying a hint of death. Darius looked over his shoulder and watched in horror as Berg and his men rode alongside him, their swords drawn. "You can't evade the void forever, Darius," Berg warned. Darius yanked the reins desperately, digging his heels into his steed as far as its hide would allow. It neighed in protest, but kept going, barely. Up ahead, He could see the gates of Kladstin, then the watchman, then Kavirus. Darius called out to them, but they failed to act as he remembered. He cried out again, this time with more ferocity. "I am Darius Rarkez, son of the king! Open the gates!" What should have come next was urgent shuffling, the groans of an opening gate, and a hail of ethereal arrows. When neither came, he shuffled on the saddle to find Berg and his battalion within striking distance. No, 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 Darius thought. He fumbled his waist for his sword, but like everything else, it deserted him. This was only ever going to end one way, Princey. Darius turned to Berg, his face awash with dismay. "But what if I'm not your enemy? You're a traitor to your family. You've got it wrong." Berg shook his head while his hair flapped wildly. "It's too late. It is never past the point of believing the truth. There is only one truth. The void awaits you." Soft chimes played. It echoed through the trees, but it seemed only he could hear it. The thunderous hooves fizzled out, leaving an eerie silence that only amplified the heavenly sound. He didn't feel Berg's sword as it struck him in the neck. The blade slid through him as though he were a ghost. All he remembered was the warm trickling of blood travelling down him. With bulging eyes, he studied the crimson soaking his hands. He looked ahead. The gates of Kladstin remained shut, the watchman and commander unmoved. Pitying looks splayed across their faces. The chimes became louder, more climactic. A voice accompanied the melody, but its words were indistinguishable. It was a more spirited whisper than anything else. Berg held his sword out, its blade stained with Darius's blood. "Death comes for us all." His tone turned menacing. Darius watched as Berg's face morphed into an onyx helmet with needles jutting from it. There were no eyes or snarl, just a blackness that ate away at his soul. Vrakor. Darius mouthed his name. The chimes grew louder, bringing with them a looming darkness. His vision became hazy, his strength drained from him. An undeniable current pulled him towards the abyss, to the void. "No!" Darius sat up and gasped for breath. He quickly searched for the wound on his neck. Instead of blood, he found sweat on his hands. Relief poured over him as he studied the small room and comfortable bed he rested on. A brilliant beam of golden sunlight pierced through the window and split the air, capturing the motes of dust. Furs covered the cobbled floor, while a desk with ink and a quill sat quietly in the corner. His memory was hazy, but he recalled reaching Kladstin and speaking with the gatekeeper. As the fog in his mind cleared, a knock sounded at the door. It creaked open, and in came a young man, no more than 18 summers. The first thing that struck Darius was his bowl-cut and perfectly shiny hair. He wore brown sandals to accompany an otherwise washed-out robe. Like the other wizards Darius could now recall, he also bared a raked figure. "Is everything all right?" he asked. "Yes." Darius took a breath, still in a slight daze. The adolescent stared at him with knowing eyes. "What?" Darius frowned. "A darkness presides over you and your dreams." His words were soft, yet hard to dismiss. "Who are you?" Darius replied. "You're barely a man." "My name is Balthazar. Contrary to my appearance, I celebrated my 200th birthday this past winter." His reply almost winded Darius. "We don't age here. We exist in a state of eternal life." "Then why do some appear older?" "It is not time, but the strength of their magic that determines the face a wizard wears." "Do you not wield sorcery?" Balthazar shrugged. "I am yet to study the way of the white light. It's the strongest and purest of all enchantment." "Is that why you're here? To learn it?" Balthazar nodded. "Now come, Darius. Mage Alderan awaits you." The young wizard led him out of the room and down a white marble staircase that spiraled to the ground floor. The tower's blanched walls were bare, except for the windows that lined its sides. It afforded plenty of natural light and staggering views of the world beyond the high ramparts of Kladstin. They descended many floors, but they were making little progress. Darius placed his hands on the cool stone ledge of the balcony. He took a deep breath and peered over. His stomach lurched as he glimpsed the depths below. Heights had always been a weakness of his. He'd sooner face off a dozen men than peer over a sheer cliff. "I can't say I've come across a Balthazar in my time," Darius said. "It is indeed a unique name." "Did your father explain why he chose it?" Balthazar shrugged. "Maybe he sensed I was different. After all, I am the only member in my family with the gift of foresight." "What does that mean?" "I see things. The past, the present, and sometimes the future." He craned his neck to Darius. "I can also see into others' minds." Darius was compelled to ask more questions, particularly ones pertaining to his destiny, but he decided against the impulse. "Feel free to inquire," Balthazar's response threw him. "However, I cannot always promise answers." Darius paused mid-step. "So, you can read thoughts too?" "Occasionally." They continued their descent of the tower as Darius pondered the possibilities. "Were your parents wizards?" he asked. "No." "Then how did you come to be one?" "Magic can skip entire generations before landing in your blood. I especially remember the day I discovered my ability. My village was enjoying a festival. I couldn't have been older than 6 or 7 summers. As my mother dressed me, something came over me. It was as if my mind fell silent. Whilst there, I saw men, murderous animals, storming our hamlet. There was no kindness in their eyes, no warmth in their hearts. It was like a dormant energy had awakened inside me." Sensing Darius's intrigue, he continued, "I brushed the vision off as a mere daydream, but later that night, a band of bandits raided the village and razed it to the ground. They raped our women, killed our sons, and left scores of dead, including my father." Darius swallowed before he spoke. "I'm sorry to hear that." "Don't be. It had to happen for me to treat my gift seriously, to nurture it. Not long after that incident, I travelled here. I've been in Kladstin ever since." "What about your mother? Do you not see her?" "She died that night too," Balthazar said, before stopping at a round wooden door. "You know what fascinates me the most about magic?" "Indulge me." "Most never realize they have it." Darius cocked a brow. "But they live for eternal life. Surely you would notice something was afoot when you outlive your children." "Not the case," Balthazar smiled. "If you fail to acknowledge the gift and unlock its power, then you are condemned to a mortal's existence." "Why do I sense there's more to what you are saying?" An amused snort escaped the wizard's nostrils as he disregarded his question and gestured to the door. "I am meeting with the Archmage in a guest quarter." Darius frowned. "You'll see," Balthazar said. He pushed it open to reveal quarters not too dissimilar to his own. A rectangular window with an uninterrupted view of the eternal ocean was the first thing to greet him. A blanket of blue with breaks of white foam stretched as far as his eyes would allow, but what stole his attention wasn't the magnificent views of the ocean, but rather the man that lay beneath a bed of thick furs. "Alir," he breathed, "you're alive?" The archer smiled. Darius rushed to the bedside, grabbing the hand of Alir and squeezing it tight. His skin was warm, unlike the ice touch of death these past couple of days. "Yes," he said, "healthy too. I feel like such." "Where are you blimmin' taking me?" came a familiar voice from behind. "I suggest you tell me where Darius is, or I'll—" Janga fell silent as Darius faced his hulking mass. The big man looked him up and down, then at the wizard that escorted him. "I see not much has changed in the way of your manners," Alir said. Janga strode into the room, whipping up a gust of wind. "The arse lives. It's good to lay eyes on you too, old friend." "How can this be?" Janga said. "What about your leg?" Alir peeled back the furs and revealed a perfectly healed thigh. No bandage, no salve, not even a scar. I don't understand, Janga uttered. Alia suddenly frowned, searching behind them. Where's Helmund? Darius and Janga exchanged a regretful look. He isn't dead, is he? Darius leaned in and asked in a soft tone, How much do you remember? Chapter 17. I can't believe he abandoned us like that. Alia shook his head, a fire burning in his eyes. That bastard. If I ever get my hands on him. Janga squeezed the air as if it were Helmund's throat. At least we are aware of who our friends are, Darius added. He glanced over his shoulder at the two wizards a short distance away. His focus lingered over Balthazar, still pondering the young sorcerer's words. Tittling, Janga interrupted his thoughts. When are we meeting this mage? Now. The sooner we form this alliance, the better. I hope he likes a good story, he huffed. We've gone through hell to get here. We can only pray he does. Allaire winced as he sat up. Without this union, I fear your father won't appreciate the magnitude of the prophecy, or the lies that dog my exile. Aye, we must tread carefully. Janga looked at Darius. But surely the threat of the Dark Lord is too great to ignore, even for a mage. We'll soon find out, Darius said to them. Come on, let's not lessen our chances by keeping him waiting. For all we know, Berg could have a small army stationed outside. Did you not see those bloody bows they conjured from thin air? Janga snorted. Not even the Crimson Guard would brave an assault here. An attack? No, Darius replied. But negotiating for our heads? That's a different matter. What could wizards possibly desire? They don't eat, drink, or have a need for gold. Everyone wants something in this world, Janga. Bows? From thin air? Alia seemed dazed by the revelation. You'll understand in time. Come, let's get you up and on your feet. Darius and Janga helped Alia out of bed. At first he was wary, but once he discovered there was no pain or discomfort, he stood unassisted. He placed more weight on his healed leg to test its strength, and couldn't believe the improvement. His features lit up like a child being gifted a prized horse. It feels as good as new, he gushed. The power of magic. Darius's lips curled into a smile. Let us see if this gift extends to an alliance. He led them from the room and into the stairwell. They greeted the wizards and followed them down the spiral stairs. Alia and Janga walked side by side, hugging the wall for support. The archer's face was awash with confusion, trying to make sense of this new lease of life. Your leg won't desert you, Darius reassured. I know, it's just a little strange. Janga frowned. Only slightly? You were near dead yesterday. Now you can walk and talk. This is beyond peculiar. Darius chuckled. Despite everything they had endured and lost, he was happy they could still find joy in the small things. Only months ago, he and Janga would have cheered for the other's demise. But today, he considered him a close friend, a brother in fact. While much rode on their upcoming meeting, he was glad they were by his side. As they reached the next level, a corridor that connected their tower to the castle greeted them. Square pockets lined the structure, allowing large swaths of light and air in. The wizards led the way, and they followed only a few paces behind. The sea's scent lingered in the passageway. Darius drank in its purity, and occasionally gazed out onto the deserted courtyard far below. His eyes fell to the blanched tree that sat alone in the square like a sentinel, its branches swaying to the gentle breeze. He wondered what messages dangled from its branches, what tidings waited to sprout. Did the parchment fall like autumn leaves? Would the wizards harvest them? These were questions that only a day ago would have belonged in a fable. I never envisioned Kladstin to be like this, Alia murmured. What did you expect? Janga asked. People flying around on brooms? No, you idiot. I thought there would be more buildings and wizards. It's so... He paused, looking for the correct word. Empty. Kladstin has endured much of man's insecurities, Darius added. Had laws not been so stringent against sorcery, this might well have had the vibrations of a city. Still, I can sense the magic in these walls. Janga eyed the place with suspicion. A tall door soon loomed before them. When they stepped through the arch, they turned a corner and entered a grand chamber with a ceiling that rose several times the height of the other tower. It could have easily fit 1,000 people. Painted panes of glass etched themselves into the paved walls, filled with a blue and orange hue from the outside. The floor itself looked to have been freshly mopped, for the glossy stone reflected everything in the room. Balthazar and the other wizard led them past towering bookshelves and round tables, each with tomes and scrolls splayed across them. Without inspecting their contents, Darius knew they contained knowledge of a deeper nature than he wished to understand. A group of 4 robed wizards appeared beside a gilded throne. Councilmen. They had their arms folded into their sleeves and wore flat gazes, not a youthful face to be had between them. If Balthazar was right in what he said, then these sorcerers possessed immense power. Darius and his cohort halted before them and sensed the weight of their judgmental eyes. An awkward moment passed, one that seemed like an aeon. Then came shuffling footsteps. The councilman made space to reveal an elderly man in pristine white robes. Unlike men his age, he moved with lightness and grace before sitting on the throne. Spikes jutted from the headrest in a continuous line down the chair's back. The mage regarded Darius and his companions with distant eyes, the strength of his enchantment duly noted. He led Janga and Alir into a bow. "You may rise," Alderan said, his sage tongue echoing through the chamber like a humbling force. Balthazar and the other wizard stepped to one side, leaving Darius, Alir, and Janga standing before Alderan and the councilman. "Mage Alderan," Darius began, his voice quivering slightly. "Without your help, my men and I would never have survived. You gave us shelter and brought my friend back from the void. For that, we are forever in your debt." A faint smile crept up the mage's pink lips. It was difficult to tell their thickness, for they hid behind a white, wiry beard that draped down his chest. "Don't mistake my hospitality for kindness or generosity, Rarkez." Suspicious stares from the councilman accompanied an awkward silence. "I did not want our gates stained with blood. I see." Darius gulped, a pit of dread forming in his stomach. "Tell me, why does the disgraced Prince of Vlencia choose to travel to Kladstin?" Alderan's remark irked Darius. "In time, I'll shed light on the lies involving my exile, but this is not the moment." "Must I remind you that you stand in our hall, Rarkez?" Darius took a deep breath. "If the truth is what will have you listen to me, then so be it." The councilman's gaze sharpened. "Prince Dillian is a traitor. He poisoned my father's mind and plotted against me. While he hid his motives well, it's clear now that he wanted to ensure his rule as king. I have been in exile ever since." "Yet you return," the mage replied without a hint of sympathy. "Why?" "I fear his intentions for the kingdom are malicious, and—" Darius looked down at the floor momentarily. "There is something else." Alderan narrowed his eyes. "Why should I listen, let alone trust, a man who carelessly defies the terms of his punishment?" "Because of what I'm about to tell you." The chamber fell silent with anticipation. "One of your kind warned me of a grave prophecy." Darius paused. "A seer." A councilman by the name of Eldred snorted. "They are not one of us." "But they are bearers of magic," Balthazar replied, earning a scowl. "Yes, possessors of black magic. Sorcery, nonetheless." "Enough," Alderan ordered. "Continue with this so-called prophecy, Rarkez." Darius breathed. "My men and I did not come to Kladstin for refuge, nor to start arguments among your ranks. We're here because the seer spoke of a great evil that would soon rise and leave Estos in ruins. What evil? Vrakor. Alderan's unblinking eyes shrunk. He remained silent for several moments. That's not possible, Eldred scoffed. Vrakor is as dead as his maker. Silence, Eldred, the mage commanded, his countenance growing stern. Eldred shuffled uncomfortably on the spot. Rarkez, you speak with conviction, yet I hear nothing but words. I do not expect you to take faith in me so easily, but I would ask you this. Darius shifted from one foot to the other. Why would an exiled prince drag his men to a certain death if he didn't believe there was weight to this prophecy? Necessity is not synonymous with truth. Mage, we are dead without your help, as will Estos. The Rarkez bloodline has done nothing to earn the support of Kladstin, Alderan sneered. Do not let my blood muddy your judgment. I am not the same. Allow me to prove that to you. A cougar never changes its stripes. Then I am the exception. You expect us to trust the prince who betrayed his own kingdom? Have I not been judged enough already? Darius spat, his anger growing with each word. What about you, wizards of Kladstin? Are you not tired of being ostracized? Silence, barked Eldred. I was banished for a crime I did not commit. Where is the fairness in that? Darius ignored the councilman. Blaming me for the actions of my ancestors is something I foolishly believed sages like yourselves were above. Alir and Janga urged him to calm down, but he paid them no heed. Passion, anger, and urgency formed a potent tonic that was too difficult to temper. When I was exiled, I knew little of the world and the wrongs my forefathers caused. Wizards, native tribes, and Elrond alike have all been the victims of Valentius Rarkez's regimes. Not my fathers, and certainly not mine. In some small way, I too feel betrayed. Darius stared at each one of them, his voice travelling to the distant reaches of the chamber. If Dillian takes power, Estos will lie in ruins. He'll not raise an army to defend it from Vrakor. He will use them to invade Elrond, conquer this sanctuary, and extend his bloodshed beyond the boundaries of the region. Lend me your voices and your support, and I pledge to overturn the false charges against my name and be the king for everyone. Alderan drummed his fingers on the armrest, bringing life to the throne. His expression betrayed no inkling of what he was thinking, only a deafening silence and the soft, rhythmic thrumming through the chamber. Your voice is powerful, he finally said. I'm sure it has moved many hearts. However, without proof that this prophecy is true, your words are just that, words. The Council of Kladstin hereby refuses your request. His reply knocked the wind from Darius. You and your men will be escorted out of the city walls by nightfall. The mage rose from his throne and stepped down, making his way to the shrouded archway at the back. The chamber soon descended into hysteria. Alir and Janga joined Darius in his calls for the Archmage to reconsider, but Eldred was quick to silence them. Are you deaf? Darius snapped. The prophecy is true. I've seen the Dark Lord in my dreams. He almost killed me in the Forbidden Forest. You are a liar, Eldred snarled, a disgraceful one at that. Out of desperation and panic, Darius drew his sword, prompting Janga to do the same. Alderan turned, his eyes blank and devoid of any emotion. Darius expected to die then and there. He came to terms that he would rather fall at the hands of a wizard than Dillian's blade. The chamber plunged into darkness as a sweeping cloud devoured the sun. With a flick of the wrist, Alderan disarmed Darius and Janga in one seamless motion and threw them across the room. The raw power rendered Alir speechless. He was both mesmerized and horrified by it. Do not make the mistake of threatening me again. Alderan's voice rumbled. He turned and made way for the exit, leaving behind a void of emptiness. Darius sunk inwards. All the work they had done to prepare for this day had been for nothing. He was naive, too proud to consider the genuine possibility of failure. Just as Alderan was about to turn a corner, Balthazar grew increasingly animated until he plucked the courage to speak. "Alderan, wait!" he shouted. "He speaks the truth." The mage halted as the councilmen exchanged frantic looks, the first of its kind since their meeting began. "You see what he speaks of?" Alderan asked. Balthazar nodded. "I do." "Explain." He turned, his expression cold and unmoved. "Darkness will rise and close in all around us." "This is no time for riddles," Eldred said. "I see netherworld beasts and a great army of warriors that bear the shape of men, but they are not. Their eyes are hollow, and their hearts are darker than the darkest of nights. Their weapons are forged in black steel, as is their armor." "What else do you discern, young Balthazar?" Alderan asked. The novice sorcerer squinted as if trying to bring the vision into focus. Darius noticed his hands trembling. "The lands burn. Men, women, and children cry." He grimaced. "Their faces I cannot see. I can only hear their wails. The darkness doesn't cease. The trees, the birds, the rivers, they are all lifeless." "And the evil that rises? What of it?" Balthazar swallowed. He steadied his breathing to focus, but it was clear whatever he was seeing frightened him. An ancient power leads this fierce army. He wears a crown of spikes and will stop at nothing until every one of us is dead or obeys his control. "Oh, the gods!" he suddenly gasped. "Speak what you see, boy," Alderan said sternly. "He has seen me." "Who?" "Vrakor!" His voice shook. "He knows." "Of what?" Alderan asked. "Everything. He sees all of us standing here. He is aware of our chatter, and he is not well pleased." A deathly chill raced up Darius's spine. Going by the worried exchanges around him, he was not the only one to feel it. Without warning, the young wizard trembled like he was experiencing some kind of seizure. Alderan rushed forward and placed a veiny palm over Balthazar's face. The trembling eventually subsided, and the boy's breathing calmed. When Alderan released his hand, Darius saw a glimmer of recognition flicker across Balthazar's eyes. The novice sorcerer surveyed the councilman, soon settling on him. "The prophecy is accurate. The Dark Lord has awoken." Darius's blood ran cold. Everyone, bar the mage, struggled to keep still. The mood inside the chamber became gloomy and filled with uncertainty. "We need to leave now, brother," Alir warned. "And go where exactly?" Janga countered. He was right. There was no place they could take shelter. There was no hiding from the Dark Lord. "If you would excuse me," Balthazar said, "I must rest in my quarters." The young wizard bowed and excused himself from the council. As he passed, his face was completely devoid of color, which Darius sympathized with. Vrakor was an evil few could stomach to think about, let alone speak of. Darius could only imagine what horrors he was capable of inflicting on the battlefield. With Balthazar gone, Alderan addressed the rest of the assembly. "The prophecy has been foreseen. There is no refusing it now. But what if this is merely the product of an overactive imagination?" Alderan turned to Eldred, bemused. "Forgive me, councilman, but I disagree." A wizard by the name of Darius stepped forward. "Balthazar is a promising sorcerer. He possesses a gift few of us do. His visions may be difficult to interpret, but I believe this one needs to be treated with utmost seriousness." The other councilman agreed. "It is settled then," Alderan said, nodding thoughtfully. "The king will hear my voice, as he shall yours, Darius Rarkez." The mage's words sent a powerful rush of hot blood to Darius's face. He had never felt so elated and terrified. While the prospect of returning to Istril was thrilling, he knew graver hurdles awaited them. "I've endured the great battle once," the mage continued, a defiance settling into his voice. "I have no plans of living through another."